Good morning. I am honored and privileged to be here. I appreciate talked to Dan in the past, and he's been nothing but helpful in my other positions when I was in elementary school. Because you probably look at, why is Barbara O'Sullivan, the school librarian from a high school, like presenting about elementary school libraries? I initially began as a part-time elementary school library at Penoyer Elementary School in Norwich, and then I moved to Worth Elementary and Worthwoods Elementary School in Worth a couple of years ago, and then I came here to St. Patrick High School. So I do have some experience with elementary schools. One thing I was just talking to my assistant principal about early this morning, I do miss picture books. We don't have a lot of picture books in high school, and high school is a lot different than the elementary school. So it's very interesting. Can everybody hear me? I hope everybody can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you great. Just tell me when you want me to advance.
I am going to turn off my.
Tell me when you want.
Okay.
Yeah, tell me when you want me to advance the slide.
So, sure. Could you advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. So to plan programming, I know that it could be like overwhelming. And for example, yesterday I'm helping a school reopen their library that has been closed for 5 years. And I know that when you're giving that task to reinvent or reopen a library, it can be very daunting. So I broke it down into how to plan programming in your library. And that is with the 3 C's. I figured I'd break it down into 3 C's today. So my 3 C's would be: get to know your collection. What do you have in your library? That is like a whole treasure trove of ideas for you to create lessons for your students. It's a good way to plan events if you're going to have events in your library. Get to know what you have in your library. The second thing is to collaborate with your teachers. That is a big way of creating content for your students when they do visit your library. Like I'm in a high school now, our students don't come in as regular as it is scheduled for elementary school, so it's totally different. But if you're bringing second grade in, first grade in, sixth grade in, find out what they're doing in their classrooms and collaborate with them. That will give you a lot of another treasure trove of ideas on what you can present to your students. And third would be check out resources at your public library. One of the first things I did as an elementary school librarian is that I did reach out to my public library. Now, when I was at Penoyer Elementary School, I reached out to Eisenhower Public Library, which is in Harwood Heights in Norwich, and I happened to have worked there as a SIR clerk. So that was a little easier for me to reach out because I know exactly who to reach out to. But when I went to Worth, I made sure that I connected with the librarian from the Worth Public Library, and we were actually collaborating with the junior high librarian in order to start a program within the school. And she also came out on numerous occasions to also do story times in the classroom. So that's also a great resource for you. Next slide, please, Dan. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with collection. Get to know what you have. My suggestion is, I know that we have a lot of work to do. As you can see, I'm a little flustered because we have a lot of going on here at St. Pat's. But you really need to take time out of your week to look at your shelves. Look at the books. read part, it's very easy to pick up a picture book and read. Even if you don't have time to read the chapter books or the older students' books, really take a time just to read a few pages of it. See if it like sparks your interest and sparks your creativity on what you could create in your classroom. Here's an example of one of the things that I discovered when I was looking around my shelves. Jumanji was very big at the time with the movies, and a lot of kids were watching that movie with The Rock and everything, and they were so into that movie. So I was looking for the book, and I actually found Chris Van Allsburg is the author, I believe, correct? And he just wrote so many wonderful books that I discovered that we had in the library. He has a wonderful book called hold on, I'm going to get it out here because I have it on my desk. The Mysteries of Harris Burdick. And a lot of his illustrations are black and white. He does them with, I believe, with pen. So what a fabulous way of, and these books also are very visual orientated with very little writing in this, The Mysteries of Harris Burdick. So I actually did use this as part of like a visual literacy lesson where for fourth graders, I took one of the pictures from this book and I put it up on the screen. And I just asked the kids to take their time and really look at this picture and find out, what do you see in it? What is cool in it? Tell us what story you could make out of this picture. And then the second thing is search your library catalog by keywords of what you're considering teaching. You will be surprised what you find in your collection. And the reason why I'm talking about that next with this book, The Mysteries of Harris Burdick, little did I know that there was a book that was created of short stories by very famous authors based on the pictures in this book, which was, what a find. Right? Well, how could you make this connection where they were using their visual literacy skills and then be able to open their minds to these fabulous individual short stories that were created by individual children's authors. So the one picture that we chose in the book, the person that wrote the author that wrote the short story was Kate DiCamillo. And she's one of my favorite authors. I have to be a little biased. I didn't have to, I'll be honest with you. Originally, when I picked the picture, I had no idea that she was the one who was writing the short story. So we actually went ahead and listened to that short story because I was also trying to teach the students that not only do we have books in the library, but you can also read by listening to a book. So I went ahead and put the book up on the screen in the library, in the classroom, and then they were just able to relax. And it was during the pandemic, so it was always a stressful time. It was kind of like a nice break for the kids during their day, that that we were able to listen to the short story just quietly at their desk. They could just relax. If they wanted to read along on the screen, they were able to do that. It was just a nice way of just calming everything, having a nice, calm, wonderful library experience in the classroom. Because unfortunately at that time we were not in the library. But I'm sure you could, have this experience as well in your library. So it gives the kids more exposure to other authors as well. So there was a connection with that. Like now they wanted, what else could I read from Kate DiCamillo, right? And we all know that, of course, you have to, tell them about Tales of Desperado and my favorite about the rabbit. Sorry, now, Tales of Edward. Oh my gosh, now I'm losing my mind. But I think that that's one of my favorite. sorry, I'm forgetting what the name of the book is, but it's one of my favorites. So, oh, Michael Tulane or Edward Tulane. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. So they were just so into reading these books, and it just opened because we did have where they could tell me like we would like to have this book or whatever, and then I would just go ahead and we were beyond that point where everybody was worried about the spreading with the circulating books. So that was always fun. So that was a great lesson for fourth grade. And the third thing on the slide is consider creating units by connecting multiple books with other resources. So Dan, could you go to the next page, please? Thank you. So here's a unit suggestion with doing that. So The Day the Crayons Quit is a very, very popular book. So why not celebrate crayons? National Crayon Day is March 31st. So I did this lesson with first graders. So we were, so we did this for an actual month. So this was a whole unit for an entire month with the first graders. Oh, yes. Yes, I'll get to that because I love it too, and the kids did too. So The Day the Crayons Quit, of course, talks about how some of them are mad because they you only use me for blueberries, like for the color blue, or green says for grass, and so it just gave the kids an idea that what's your favorite color, and would you color something different, like blue's mad that you're not going to make red blueberries, why not, or you gave them that was the end. We read the book, and then at the end they actually got to use their crayons during this entire unit with just not coloring some random color page. Like we talked about, what would you make with your favorite color red? Is there something in the book that you would make, or is there something different? So they were able to draw their own picture with their favorite color. Or, what, if you have a favorite thing that might not be your favorite color, could you draw that with your favorite color? So that was always a big thing. So, yeah, so that was fun with the kids. And then because I was trying to open up their, the idea that sometimes there's books in series, so there would be the same characters in one book that might be in another. So that's when we read The Day the Crayons Came Home, and to give them the idea that yes, there's other books in this series, they're the same crayons are in the series, and it's a and as you know, if you don't know, a lot of people would know this, but he has written other books about the crayons, so it has continued. After that, they're just like so enthralled with, now we're going to talk about the man who actually invented and made crayons. So to start, before we read that book, we actually, and I have the link there on the slide, that is the video from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Who doesn't love Mr. Rogers, right? That you can use that video. The kids love that video. They love to watch how crayons are made. So they have an opportunity to watch the actual crayons being made. And then we read the book, The Crayon Man. There was another connection with what we talked about earlier in the year, where we're talking about fiction versus nonfiction. So we talked about, do crayons really talk? Crayons don't really talk, right? So what do you think it is, fiction or nonfiction? That's fiction, right? But here is a story about a real man that created crayons. So that gave an opportunity to say, that they, this is a nonfiction book. This is a real story about the man who made crayons. So that gave an opportunity. And I'm looking at some of your comments, and I really appreciate that. I know that a lot of people, you only have 30 minutes. That's why at Worth, this is when I did it at Worth. I was at 2 schools at Worth, so I was doing classes pretty much most of the day. I used to do checkout every other week. 'Week. 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 ' And that's very, very extremely important. That's one of our roles. But I do check out every other week just because I was the only one that would shelf books, do all that. So unfortunately, I just said I can't have to check out every week. And some people are saying you only have 20 minutes. Even if you could tweak like anything that you could make it stretch it out into that whole month, maybe just say, hey, you could just go over the book and then watch the video and then have them check out. I understand that you only have a few minutes. So, anything, I hope that I can, if you ever need to reach out to me just to make it shorter or whatever, I'd be happy to help you with that. So you could reach out to me. Dan, if you could click the next slide, please. 2, collaborate with teachers. I know I'm focusing on what happens in March, it looks like, but this was a collaboration I did with the 2nd grade teacher. She wanted to do something that celebrated Pi Day circles, right? So I said, hey, what would be great if we talked about Kandinsky, who is a famous artist who was who had synesthesia, that he believed that color meant music. And wouldn't that be fun to do? Because he did a color studies with circles. So we had the opportunity to read The Noisy Paintbox, which is a book that is it's a very meaty red book with and that's why we did it with 2nd grade students. I think it's a little bit too meaty for the younger kids, but for 2nd grade students, it was a long read aloud. And we actually, when I did read aloud that book, we actually looked at the colors. We talked about colors because the idea was at the end, I said, oh, then I made the connection to, I hear that you guys are learning about circles and pi and all that. Wouldn't it be fun to make our own circles like Kandinsky did? And the book doesn't address the circles, but we introduce it like he made these cool things so he could see what colors went together and what was fun for his paintings, right? So we all created each student. Now, I know that some of you have very, very limited time. So I created these kits already for the kids that had the square and had circles in it. So they would pick the kit by what color they, went to or whatever. I said, who likes yellow? Okay, then I would pass out a yellow square. Who likes red? And then I would try to make it as, easy as possible for them to create these squares with the circles. But if you have time with your day, if you wanted to make this into more than one or 2 week, like a unit, you could do that where they would actually cut the circles out themselves or cut the squares out themselves. I didn't do that, but you could do that. So the kids would take these circles and they would glue them together themselves. So they created the squares with the Kandinsky, quote unquote, Kandinsky circles themselves, which were cut out of regular colored paper. And then they glued it onto the square. And each of these squares, this was all put together as one big poster, as you see on the right of the, from where the Noisy Paintbox book is. And they were glued on one paper, and that was hung in my library. And I still have it to this day. I have it on my desk here. I have kept it, and I have shown it at other presentations that I've created, because to me it was always one of the most proudest things I ever did with the 2nd grade. I just loved it. They had so much fun doing it. And the art teacher was also talking about color and what's complementary and what is not. So that was brought into that whole thing with color. So that was also a connection with the art teacher. Dan, if you could switch the slide, please. Sorry, got a little craw in my, a little something in my throat, but I think I'm okay now. Literacy nights. Most schools have literacy nights, so it's a great way to showcase whatever books that you have purchased for the school library. So when I was at Penoyer, one year we did a book tasting. for our literacy night. And that was where we created a restaurant kind of atmosphere in our gym. And they ordered pizza at the beginning. People were able to eat like in the section that was for eating, because we had two different sections. We had the book tasting set up in one area, and then we had the food and the drink and everything to set up in the other area. And then after the pizza, they eating when the families were done eating pizza, the students before the book tasting, if they were coming, they would just tell me what kind of books they like to read, what grade they were in, what kind of books they like to read. And I kind of tried to pull a stack of like 3 books that they could look at with their parent, and they could look at books and decide whether they liked the books or whatever. And they were able to read them with their parent, and it was just a great experience. That experience lasted for about an hour and a half, the whole literacy night. So it was a way just to get the kids interested in new books, and not only that they see that their parents are reading, right? So it was a great thing to do. The second night we did a camp. The second thing, literacy night I want to talk about is we had a camping theme where we had a big campfire in the gym, where we invited police officers, the mayor, the firemen. They all came in and read a book too. They had stations around. They could go sit with whoever they wanted to sit with. They would read a particular book that dealt with their profession. So for example, the police officer would read the book with Gloria, the police officer, and the Gloria the dog. So they read that book to the students. And then there were different stations we handed out, in fact, for their like party, Officer Buckle and Gloria. I don't know why I can't remember these books. Probably not because I'm sitting in a high school library. Actually, it's in my room because I bought it at a book sale, and I do want to start a picture book section here for the kids here, kind of like a classic, like back in time book section for kids. But thank you for that. So we handed out like s'more kits so they could go home and make s'mores that night. So that was a nice connection with that. Another connection where the parents were able to sit and they could hear people in their community read to them. So that was our second literacy night. Dan, could you move the next slide, please? 3, check out resources at your public library in both print and digital formats. So like I said it before, one of the first things I did was make a connection with the public library. But one of the, everybody might not have a unlimited budget, and you might have only a certain amount of money that you could spend. I think going to the public library to see what is quote unquote new and being able to read those books and to see if they make a fit in your school is a great idea. So I always went to the public library. On occasion, I just go in there, I'd look around, take a look around. If they are looking at you kind of funny because you don't have a child with you, I always introduce myself to the children or teens librarian and tell them, hi, I'm from, so-and-so school or whatever. I'm just here to look at your section and see what's new in books. Just, and I've had some wonderful conversations with the public librarian at that time. So they're there to help you. So it's a great partnership to have. So what I would always do, I started doing this, I would just pick a random book off the shelf and I would read it and see if I could do something with it. If there's something I could connect with what they were doing and my students were doing in the classroom, or this is really a kind of a cool book. What could I do? What ideas could I do and do something new and different in the library? If you don't particularly like the book, I always say this to kids, there's sometimes you're not going to like a book, and that's okay. Sometimes we don't like books either. Maybe we'll put it on the shelf, or you could challenge yourself and say, I kind of don't like that book, but you know what? maybe I'm going to try to teach it. So there, I've done that too, where I'm like, but there might be a student that likes that book, so maybe I'm going to try it. And then I ended up, I believe I did that with a book that I didn't particularly like about a certain artist I didn't like, and I ended up using the book anyway. So, sometimes you might not like it, but the other students might like it. And like I said, introduce yourself to the children's teen or the outreach librarian, depending on what their title is. Dan, could you switch to the next slide? Here's an example of digital resources. When I was at Worth, this is actually the Tumble Book Library is actually open for anybody to use if you go on the Worth website and look under online resources. So you can go in there and get audiobooks. You can also get videos of books. Especially during the pandemic when we were wearing masks, it was very difficult at times to do story time all the time, talking out of that mask. So there was a wonderful book about all about snow, which I do. I do a whole snow theme either during December or January for kindergartners, where now we're talking about also that is a nonfiction book. You can talk about fiction books about snow, nonfiction books about snow, but there's a video on there which saved my voice for the day, and they were able, you could stop the video in between, like when you want to talk to them about specific things. But at times, I think it was just difficult sometimes to have as many classes as we had, and be able to do story time all the time. So that was my saving grace on there. And you can just click through there. There's videos, like I said, audio books, other books that just, turn the pages so you could read it. It's a great resource. So always look at your public library and see what they have available for you to be able to use. Next slide, Dan, please. And most importantly, I hope you guys are having fun being in the library. I came out of retirement and I'm a librarian now, and I am just having the best time. This is my, I'm at St. Pat's. This is probably my third renovation that I've been through for a library. So it's just fun that you can, I just love libraries. I hope that you saw that when I was doing my presentation. So, and I am finished. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take some. I'm sorry if I went over a minute. I'm sorry.
Went over a minute.
And I'm sorry about the,
we made it work.
I'm sorry about the blip with, yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry about the blip with the connection and everything else.
Nope. No
But
problem, Barb. Yep.
I hope that you will you are more than happy to, you can reach out to me, bosullivan@stpatrick.org. I'd be happy to help you. I do, like I said, I do miss, I love being at St. Pat's. It's a great school, and I love the kids here, but I do miss those picture books. I do miss that. That's why when this came out, I'm like, I'll do the presentation. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Barb.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, great presentation. If you want to email Barb, you can do that.